Not long ago, he was the closest confidant and most trusted advisor to the highest-ranking man in government. They called him the Hand. Now he was in prison, accused of conspiracy and treason. The new ruler had him tortured, his wealth confiscated, his family were hostages of the state. If you think I'm talking about Ned Stark of Winterfell, the noble to a fault character in George R.R. Martin's epic fantasy Game of Thrones, you're wrong. I'm talking about Niccolo Machiavelli of Florence in 1513. Yes, that Machiavelli. Hello, Wander Readers. I'm Angie Hilbert, and this is WanderLit, the podcast for wandering readers and writers. Today, we're talking about the city of Florence, Italy, the books Game of Thrones, and The Prince, and how Machiavelli's name came to define dark and sinister social manipulations. Today, when we use the term Machiavellian, we mean someone who is dark and coldly manipulative. In their research on how Machiavellians make social decisions, Bretsky and Sybor defined Machiavellianism as an attitudinal personality predisposition to see people as exploitable in interpersonal situations. They identified three core components to a Machiavellian personality. The Machiavellian has no regard for conventional morality. They have a very strong self-interest and act upon it aggressively. And they are dispassionate and calculating in their plans and actions. So really, if we want to look at George R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones, that sounds more like his character, Peter Baelish, than Honorable Ned Stark. So who exactly was Machiavelli? Was he Ned Stark, Hand of the King? Or was he Lord Baelish, the little finger in everyone's pie? In life, Niccolo Machiavelli was a historian. His early writings expressed a longing for Rome of former centuries. It disturbed him that his modern 16th century Italy was a country reduced and fragmented by violence and political instability. Dr. Vuja Vinovac of the University of Belgrade shows us Machiavelli believed in a return to the strength of Rome's golden age and the Pax Romana. He supported the political movement of his day, calling for republicanism, where the people of Italy would have access to a representative form of government uniting the city-states. Indeed, when the Medici family fell in 1494, Machiavelli involved himself in the politics of the new republic, and 4 years later, he was appointed to the highest office that he personally would ever hold, head of the Second Chancery. Machiavelli's family, although prominent, sprouted him on one of the lesser branches, so apparently an assignment to the first chancery was out of the question. Still, even in his secondary position, he was overwhelmed with joy at serving the Republic and the city that he loved. In a particularly anti-Machiavellian statement, he wrote that Florence was dearer to him even than my own soul. He worked tirelessly for the Republic as a civic servant. Even in his humble role in the Second Chancery, he displayed his expertise on Roman republicanism. Slowly, he became the most trusted friend and unofficial advisor to Piero Soderini, Chief Magistrate for Life of Florence. It is in this role that his enemies called him Piero's Little Hand, because Machiavelli's keen political insight and his understanding of human nature often posed an obstacle to his enemies' plans to split the Republic back into the individual city-states. But split it eventually did, And when the Medici family returned to power in 1512, everything Machiavelli had dreamed of for Italy and Florence was over. Being an, albeit unofficially, important man on the losing side, his fate included imprisonment, torture, and the confiscation of his property. The next several decades saw Machiavelli as an unemployed historian. His keen understanding of human nature observed the turbulent politics of these very violent times. Cities and regions frequently rose and fell, passing in and out of existence at the stroke of a pen or the thrust of a sword, and Machiavelli saw this as a sickness in the body politic. He thought it required curative measures. In his discourses, as translated by Dr. Vujovanovic, Machiavelli states that the rule of the prince, or that rule of a prince instigates the harmful behavior of the prince to the city, and the harmful behavior of the city to the prince. Further, he observes, only a republican form of governance is capable of ensuring the promotion of the common good. Now, today, Machiavellianism is defined as a personality type that views other people only as objects to be manipulated for one's own purposes. That definition is from Wrench, McCroskey, and Richmond, but there are other definitions too, but all of them are pretty sinister. When psychologists Ian Carey et al. Discuss the emotional core of Machiavellianism, they say that people exhibiting high levels of Machiavellianism are characterized by interpersonal manipulation, such as the use of flattery and deceit, and being aloof and cynical and amoral. They adopt these amoral viewpoints in order to promote their own interests. So, how did Machiavelli's name come to be the definition of such a dark personality that he himself never exhibited nor endorsed? Well, he wrote The Prince. Although Machiavelli was released from prison to return to his family, a very humbled man, Lorenzo Medici never trusted him. Machiavelli lived in exile until 1520, and it was during this period of disillusionment and depression that he wrote his most enduring works, The Prince, The Discourses, and The Mandrake Root, which was a comical satire. When read in the context of his life, there is a bitter irony to The Prince. It's no accident that over and over he illustrates that if you're going to be a successful prince, it will cost you your honor and your integrity. That to be a successful prince, you must pay with your soul and have to be okay with that. His advice to a new monarch is that you cannot hold power over the people honorably, because he himself believed only a representative government can do that. And in his lifetime anyway, it failed. Apparently, to him, in this cruel world, to be a prince takes duplicity, cold expediency, and cunning use of force. When read in this way, The Prince is perhaps not simply lessons to a new prince recently come to power, but is instead a sad and cautionary tale, or possibly even a bitter satire. Of course, none of this changes our modern definition of Machiavellianism. It still means to us what the psychologists and sociologists tells us it means. But the next time you hear the term, spare a thought for old Niccolo, the political dreamer who was disillusioned by war and torture. Our dear Machiavelli did get one final happiness in his life. In May of 1527, Charles V was victorious over Rome, and Florence ejected the Medici, who was an ally to Rome. Machiavelli died less than a month later, a citizen of a republic. Thank Thank you very much for joining me today. This is Angie Hilbert inviting you to read, write, and wander with me at WanderLit, a Wanderlust and Lipstick blog. Modern definitions and observations of the Machiavellian personality were drawn from Wrench, McCroskey, and Richmond's Communications in Everyday Life, Ian Carey et al.'s research on the emotional core of multidimensional Machiavellian personality trait as published in Frontiers in Psychology, and the observations of Bretsky and Sybor published in Personality and Individual Differences. The biographical information about Machiavelli is from Wayne A. Rebhorn's introduction to his translation of The Prince by Machiavelli, and interpretive observations are from Dr. Vujavanovic's research on Machiavelli's Republican political philosophy, which was published in the Journal of Philosophy and Social Criticism. References to Ned Stark and Peter Baelish are from A Game of Thrones, Book 1 in George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire series. Thank you very much.